The next item on the agenda is the presentation of the Ruth G. Shapiro Memorial Award. I have to take another moment of personal privilege here. It is very special for me to introduce our stellar president, David Miranda, to give the Ruth G. Shapiro Memorial Award, because Ruth is the reason that I'm on the podium today. I got involved in NYSBA in 1988 when Ruth, who was a partner, a tax partner, I was a litigation associate, but a tax partner at Proskauer, invited me to join what was then the Special Committee on Women in the Courts, is now the Committee on Women in the Law, of which she was the first chair. I was the chair of the subcommittee a few years later that selected then Judge Judith Kaye as the first recipient of the Ruth G. Shapiro Memorial Award after Ruth's untimely death. And this is also a special day for me because our most deserving award recipient, Dean Patty Salkin, is a good friend and a great bar buddy. I met her through work together here. And I thank Patty for all her contributions to women in the law and to our association, and congratulate her on receiving the Ruth G. Shapiro Memorial Award. So, David?
Thank you, Claire. Today we present one of the New York State Bar Association's most prestigious awards. It's a remarkable honor given in honor of a remarkable woman, the Ruth G. Shapiro Award. And I'd like to recognize the members of Ms. Shapiro's family who we're so pleased to have with us here today. Jane Shapiro, Ruth's daughter, Ruth's sister, Judge Miriam Sederbaum. And we'd like to thank you for coming here and helping us celebrate Ruth's spirit. Ruth Shapiro was a nationally known tax attorney and a partner in the New York firm of Proskauer. She received her law degree from Columbia Law School, where she was notes editor of the Law Review. In 1978, President Carter appointed her to the Tax Court Nominating Commission. She was past chairwoman of our Bar Association's tax section, as well as on its Finance Committee and Executive Committee. From 1986 to 1989, she headed a special committee on women in the court set up by our state bar. The Ruth Shapiro Memorial Award was developed and continued by our Committee on Women in the Law in honor of Ruth, its first chair. The committee's first report, developed in 1987 under Ruth's guidance, served as a springboard for subsequent state bar reports and actions on issues affecting not only women in the profession but the public at large. These include issues related to domestic violence, child abuse, bias, health issues, and gender equity. Through her leadership, the committee instituted educational programs and publications for the public and the profession. The award is given to honor a member of our association, man or woman, who has made a noteworthy contribution to the concerns of women through pro bono services, writing, service to bar associations, or community organizations. I am so very pleased to recognize this year's award winner, Patricia Salkin. Patty. Patty's family is here with us today and very proud, as they should be. And I'd like to recognize Patty's husband, Howard Gross, their children, Jordan and Sydney, and Patty's very proud parents, Stu and Sheila Salkin. It's so wonderful that you could all be with us here today in honor of Patty. Patty is Dean of Touro College, Jacob Fuchsberg Law Center, and also serves at the same time as interim provost of the Touro College Graduate and Professional Divisions, which is just so typical of Patty doing so many things at the same time. She joined Touro in 2012 and is its first woman dean. She's a graduate of Albany Law School, and I'm very proud to say a classmate of mine from the class of '88. She started her career at Albany Law's Government Law Center, where she served for 20 years. She was a distinguished professor of law there, as well as associate dean and director of the Government Law Center at Albany Law School. Patty has been a long and devoted member of the Bar Association. In 1999, she spearheaded the development of the New York State Bar Association's Government Law and Policy Journal, which has gone on to become one of our most respected publications. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about Patty by reading you the table of contents for that first publication. Following topics: public ethics, public trust, ethics, 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 who is the client of a government lawyer, confidentiality, court secrecy, pro bono, ethics, and ethics. Not surprisingly, Patty masterfully co-chaired our association's Committee on Government Ethics, and our report on government ethics that this House passed a few years ago has really been a foundation of our association's policies when we deal with government ethics issues in the years since. And I can tell you that as president, those reports that all of you, and especially Patty, has worked on serve us well. Patty is co-chair of the New York State Bar Association's Committee on Legal Education and Admission to the Bar, and the work of that committee and Patty's hard work enabled our association to take a strong and thoughtful position on changes to the bar exam that are, in fact, occurring now. She is active in the leadership of the New York State Bar, the ABA, the American Association of Law Schools. She's a nationally recognized authority on land use and zoning law and has written extensively about it. She has a particular interest in environmental justice issues and served as an appointed member of the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council, a federal advisory committee to the U.S. EPA. She has been and is a leader working to advance the status of women in the legal profession through her scholarship, her service, and her work in the community. She edited the ABA book on women trailblazers in the law, served as liaison to the ABA Commission on Women in the Law, and established the country's first Justice Patch program with the Girl Scouts of Suffolk County. Patty also has a weekly radio show, so we'll give her a plug, called On the Docket, broadcast by Long Island News Radio 103.9, airing every Sunday, 4:30 to 5. Time and again, Patty has been the go-to person for getting things done here in the bar, in academia, and in her community. And it is my honor and privilege to present this award to Dean Patty Salkin.
Ellen's putting it on Facebook. So, Dave, thank you very much for that warm and generous introduction. Over the top. So often when you're introduced, people say, I wish that my mother could have heard that. Well, I'm really proud that my mother is sitting to my left. Both my parents are here, as Dave mentioned. So thank you for saying something nice in front of my parents. Members of the Committee on Women in the Law, I want to really thank you for bestowing upon me this really great honor. There is truly, in my mind, no more meaningful recognition from this association than the Ruth Shapiro Award. I'm grateful to Ruth's family for being here today. And when I read through the list, every year when I sit here with you, of the prior recipients, and I read it again this morning, it's just awe-inspiring. There are many past recipients that are in the room today. Could you just please rise so we could all continue to say thank you? It is, for me this year, bittersweet, as I had envisioned in the audience today, like I think every year gone by, that one of the great women lawyers, the one all of us strive to emulate, the first Ruth Shapiro honoree, Judith K., would have been here to share this moment with me. As Dave said, she always supported this association and the women in particular. And while she may not be physically present today, her spirit and presence is felt because she was a significant door opener, mentor, and role model, not just for me, but for so many of us. And so, like so many other women attorneys this week, I too wear my red today in her honor. And my quick story, just another Judith K-ism. My daughter Sydney is here, and when Sydney was born 22 years ago, I got home from the hospital. The phone was ringing, my husband answers the phone, and he says, "It's Judith K." And I sat there saying, why would Judith K. be calling me? And she said, "Patty, I wanted to say Mazel Tov on the birth of your daughter." The fact that she took the time for a young female lawyer to call me to say congratulations on the birth of my child is something that I will never forget. And it taught me a lot and things that I tried to emulate. There's lots of Judith K. stories that we have. But members of this House, I have to admit that while I have been very comfortable standing before this great body in the past on sometimes controversial reports and recommendations, and Dave, there were more controversial reports than the ethics report and then the UBE report, like some of you remember eminent domain and town and village justice courts, I stand before you today humbled and a bit nervous because, first of all, it's easier to give than to receive. And second, because I internalize the responsibility going forward that comes with this award, an obligation to always do more and do better for women in the profession. I could have used my few minutes to thank myriad men and women who were my mentors and role models, people like George Carpinello, who opened the door on academia that changed my life. My grandmother, Ann Gustin, a child of immigrant parents who lived through the Depression and gave up her professional passion and career aspirations to help her family survive. And she was the constant whisper in my ear as a child that I should become a lawyer. I might also spend time telling you about my uncle, David Greenberg, and how he let me work in his law firm when I was in high school, feeding my voracious appetite for the power of law. Or John Baker, the former dean at Albany Law School, who believed in me so early on in my career to give me the unbelievable platform to build a nationally recognized think tank where I could help change the laws for the better every day. And now, President Alan Kadish and the senior leadership at Touro College and the faculty at Touro Law Center, who have afforded me with the opportunity to impact legal education and reform in an era of a rapidly changing profession, and who have entrusted me with a great law school committed to social justice, access to the profession, and service to our community. And of course, my partner in every sense of the word, my husband of 30 years, Howard Gross. We go through this adventure together, and truly you should be up here with me because these accomplishments and dreams are supported and only realized with you by my side every step of the way. I also want to thank the incredible women and men who had something to do with my nomination. Patty DeRocha, Touro Professor Eileen Kaufman, a former Ruth Shapiro honoree, Carol Van Scoik, Chair of the Municipal Law Section, the team at the Pace Land Use Law Center, Professor John Nolan, Jessica Bosher, Tiffany Zazula, and Jenny Nolan, two of my students who inspire me every day, Denise Mira and Heidi Collins, David Shraver and Kate Madigan, two past presidents of this association, Rosemary Tully, Erica Levine Powers, Tara Scully, and my former colleague from Albany, Professor Janine Taranto. Thank you for taking the time to support the nomination. So based on what you've just heard, you might think, okay, Salkin, great, sit down, you're living the dream. On the contrary, things are not so great. In this room are leaders of the bench and bar, advocates for social justice and protectors of the rule of law. And in this room are people who will chart a better tomorrow for women in the profession and women in society. Our challenges are great and our agenda is serious, but I know that we are all up to the task. In the legal profession, women still have a long way to go. It wasn't until 1970 that the American Association of Law Schools created a committee on women in legal education. And by the way, a man was its first chair. This New York State Bar Association led the way for other bar associations in 1986 with the establishment of the Committee on Women in the Law. The ABA followed us in 1987, creating the Commission on Women in the Profession. That was the same year that we elected our first female president of this association 110 years after our founding, Mary Ann Saccomondo Freeman. Since then, in the last almost 30 years, we've only had 4 more women presidents. Catherine Richardson, who's here, Lorraine Power Tharp, Kate Grant Madigan, and Bernice Lieber, who's here. But we are poised to make a quick statistical change. Look at the podium. With Claire Goodekunst and Sharon Gerstmann following my good friend and great leader, Dave Miranda. And Ellen, your leadership, not just on the executive committee, but with the Committee on Women in the Law, the time that you spend with law students, I know at Touro and at other law schools, and young women starting out on their careers, is a gift of time that is priceless and selfless. I can only imagine that if Ruth Shapiro were with us today, she'd be proud of all of our women bar leaders, and especially pleased with one of her Proskauer successes, Claire Goodekunst. In fact, I believe you've heard from Claire that Claire is here today because of Ruth's mentoring and Ruth's urging. With women representing roughly half of the law students in law schools today, we can and must do better to open more pathways to leadership. But this is just a small glimpse of the bigger picture. Over the last few years, there have been a number of disturbing studies and reports issued documenting how women are losing ground in our stride towards equality in the profession. For example, only 20% of law school deans in this country are women. Women comprise less than 25% of the federal bench, and nationally just over 25% of state judgeships. From this flows many consequences. 30 years ago, a 1986 task force report from OCA on women in the courts started with the following statement, quote, "The New York State Task Force on Women in the Courts has concluded that gender bias against women litigants, attorneys, and court employees is a pervasive problem with grave consequences. Women are often denied equal justice, equal treatment, and equal opportunity." The report continues, quote, "With leadership, there will be change. Ultimately, reform depends upon the willingness of bench and bar to engage in intense self-examination and on the public's resolve to demand a justice system more fully committed to fairness and equality." And while it's true that we have made inroads, it's also staggering how much more we have to do still 30 years later. Catalyst's recent data on women in the law in the United States reveals significant gender gaps and posits that given the slow rate of change, it will take more than a woman lawyer's lifetime to achieve equality. I don't know about you, but I don't have more than a lifetime to wait. And we need to wake up before the work of those who came before us gets unraveled. 50 years ago, a woman earned 59 cents to every dollar earned by a man. And today, according to a recent report by the Association of University Women, it's risen to 79 cents to a man's dollar. Put in another way, women have achieved a mere 20 cents in 50 years. According to the American Bar Association, the wage gap continues to persist across all professions, for all races, at all educational levels, and in all geographic areas. Former ABA President Laurel Bellows wrote that for lawyers, women's pay isn't equal to men's, and that the gap amounts to between $700,000 and $2 million during a woman's lifetime. She spoke about how the glass ceiling continues to limit women's progress in the practice of law, including implicit bias and hidden stereotypes, programs that were pervasive throughout this week's meetings. She noted that the percentage of women equity partners has remained static at 16% or less, and that 85% of women of color leave large firms after 5 years. I could go on with the data, and I know many of us have heard it before. But the June 2014 report of our Committee on Women in the Law is chock full of sobering statistics and citations, and not much has changed since June of 2014. When asked what law firms could do to address the data, Bellows responded that law firms can create a climate where senior partners mentor entry-level women associates and sponsor, she emphasized sponsor, not simply mentor women to ensure their success. The most important thing she said, however, is that women must also shoulder the responsibility of sponsoring other women and promoting the achievements of other women inside and outside of their organization. So I'm asking each one of you here today, regardless of whether you work in the public, private, or nonprofit sector, to join me in committing to mentoring, but also sponsoring and promoting other women. If we were all to line up shoulder to shoulder, what a strong foundation we could create to lift up others who can take our goals, our desires, and our passions to the next level. And let me give you one example. The name Shirley Adelson Siegel should ring a bell for you. She was the only woman in the Yale Law School class of 1941. She had something else in common with Ruth Shapiro. Shirley struggled to find work as a lawyer until Proskauer Rose hired her as their first female attorney. She later joined the New York State Department of Law and, among other things, worked in their Civil Rights Bureau, where she helped enforce fair hiring practices for women and minorities in trade unions and airlines, and helped get a law through the state legislature banning sex discrimination. I can't begin to explain to you how it feels when I get letters from Shirley telling me that she read my latest communications from Touro Law and how proud she is of me, or the coveted times that I've been fortunate to spend visiting with her and talking about her pioneering roles in land use, open space, civil rights, affordable housing, and listening to her memories of arguing before the U.S. Supreme Court, something many of us dream about. Even at the young age of 97, today, Shirley gives me her shoulder, provides me with motivation and inspiration, and takes the time to tell another woman lawyer, I'm watching you, and you go, girl. Shirley, thank you for being here today. Could you please stand up? And those of you that know me know that I have to close with just words about two more important women. One of my other heroines is Kate Stoneman, not because we went to the same college and law school, but because she was a risk taker and a strong advocate for what she believed. Recognized by this association as a woman trailblazer, along with Shirley, Kate took the New York State Bar exam in 1885, becoming the first woman to pass, but she was denied admission because of her gender. She went to the governor and the legislature to get a law passed to permit the admission of qualified applicants without regard to sex or race. It passed, and she became New York's first woman lawyer. An activist in the suffrage and temperance movements, Kate stated a message to younger women. They must take their opportunities as they come, she said. Always there are opportunities to be had. I try to take as many opportunities as I am afforded, dear Kate, and I never take for granted that I may be privileged with more opportunities than others, and I pledge with each one to make a positive difference. While my son Jordan is away at college, he's here with us today thanks to the streaming technology. To my daughter Sydney, who's in the house, we're both fond of Eleanor Roosevelt-isms. So remember, Sydney, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And Sid, I know that one day I'm going to see you sitting here in this House of Delegates with the passion and conviction for making a difference in the lives of others. I want to give a special shout out to my colleagues from Touro College and Touro Law Center who made the time to be present today, as well as to my family and friends. I want to thank you, and I want to thank again the Committee on Women in the Law and all of you, the New York State Bar Association, for giving me the honor of standing humbly before you today.